Cherie's well-known secret to success is to make information fun, sexy and entertaining. So to bring us some fun, sex and entertainment, please welcome Cherie Maris.
Are you ready to get raunchy? I'll try not to make it too raunchy. Thank you for having me. So I've been asked to talk about the importance of diversity, and I love myself a pun. And you can probably tell by that picture that I have a very warped sense of humour. Now, diversity is really important. It's critical in the marine environment, and it's not only critical for the marine animals in our marine environment, it's also critical to us. Our marine environment nurtures us. We get medicines from the marine environment. It helps to regulate our climate. Every second breath we take is a result of the oxygen produced from the marine environment. So it's incredibly important. And it should be called a blue planet because most of the Earth is actually water, but in fact it's not. It's called Earth. And so what I want to do is I want to take you on a bit of a journey, and I want you, I suppose, to try and get some lessons about the importance of diversity and how it's also important on land in the work that you guys do, which is just nothing short of absolutely spectacular. So we're going to go on a bit of a swim. I want you to dust off your masks and snorkels and get ready to dive in as I showcase some of the incredible diversity we have on our front doorstep in Melbourne on the cooler southern shores. Are you ready to go? Excellent. So here we go, jumping in. So when people think of diversity and colour and life, people automatically, for some reason, think of the Great Barrier Reef. That's the pinnacle of marine environments. But the really interesting thing when it comes to diversity, it's actually not that diverse. Only 10 to 15% of the marine life that you'll find in the Great Barrier Reef is found nowhere else on Earth. But here, on our front doorstep, the marine life in the coolest southern shores, over 82% of that life is found nowhere else. So it's incredibly unique. Now, all the footage that you're going to be seeing here is actually found in Port Phillip and along the southern shore, so along the Victorian coastline. Do I have any snorkelers or scuba divers here? Hands up, wave your hands, put your hands up in the air. Excellent. So we've got beautiful seals that you can interact with. We've got beautiful sponge gardens and rocky reefs. I mean, look at this colour. You would think that you're on some tropical reef, but this was taken inside Port Phillip. Then you have, incredible kelp forests which provide habitats for Victoria's state marine emblem, this mystical looking fish which is called a weedy sea dragon. People from all over the world come to explore and snorkel and dive with these incredible creatures. Now, when it comes to diversity, it's really important that we have a diverse environment. If we're all the same, one, it's going to be really boring, but if everything's the same, if everyone feeds on the same thing, if everyone wants to live in the same place, well, what's going to happen? We're going to compete and then we're going to go extinct, and that's the last thing that we want to happen or we need to happen. Examples of this can be seen in feeding strategies. Now, these animals occupy all the same type of niche. This is a little cowfish. What it does is it feeds by blowing jets of water into the sand, which mobilises animals in the sand so it could actually suck it up. Little mice and shrimp and little worms and things like that. You've then got animals that look like, well, they have a face only a mother could love. This is called a stargazer. Can you see its kind of big grumpy mouth and its big eyes? What it is, it's like a sand assassin. So it buries itself in the sand using its fins, kind of like shovels. And if you imagine, it's probably about the size of a bulldog. So its feeding strategy is to basically hide and wait for something to swim past. There it is there. It's not the most attractive thing. Has anyone ever eaten a monkfish? Anyone eaten monkfish? Well, that's what you're eating, yeah, a stargazer. Apparently they're really lovely, but I can't eat them because I love them so much. So they bury themselves in the sand and they just wait. They're called stargazers because their eyes are like periscopes and they come up and it looks like they're gazing at the stars. What they're doing is they're actually waiting for a fish to swim by before they kind of launch out with their big gaping mouth. Oh no. Even eyes are camouflaged? Can you see it? That's me when I'm hungry on a Saturday night. You can just see how quick they are. So they're these sand assassins. So again, they're not feeding on the little creatures in the sand. They're waiting for fish to swim by, so occupying a different niche. Then you've got other fish who are completely bizarre. It's like some mad scientist thought, let's just kind of grab all these tools together and create this weird-looking fish and put it out there and see how it goes. This is a tasseled angler. Now, it's a fish that fishes for other fish with a rod and worm-like lure fused to its face. You know, as you do. Now, have I got a little... I'm too scared to press this. Have I got a little... just work over here. So, there's its mouth, and on its face, can you see that line running up the centre? That's its rod. At the end of that rod is like a little U shape. That's its lure. So what it does is it actually lures its prey. Now, it's pretty lazy. It doesn't really want to go swimming around because it's not a great swimmer. And you can see its pectoral fins are kind of like hands. So it just sits there and waits for food to come to it. You can see it just disappears seamlessly. Its eyes are really well camouflaged. It's got these bits of seaweed coming off of it. Can you see where that is in that picture? Yeah, to the left. And here it goes, casting away. There's its little lure. But we all know there's no such thing as a free feed in the sea. How quick is it? Ridiculously quick, but pretty ingenious, I think. So you've got all these animals operating independently, and they're great, they're doing their own thing. But what if you actually start working together? So there's power in working independently, but there's also power in working together. As you all know, what you create is just, as I said, is phenomenal. But working together can happen on a small level, but can be incredibly powerful. And I want to showcase, I suppose, what can be achieved with partnerships, small and big. As an example of partnerships and diversity of partnerships is the blue-ring octopus, one of the most venomous animals on the planet. Now, by itself, the blue-ring octopus isn't venomous. It's got a partner in crime, tiny bacteria which it harnesses. When it has that bacteria, it becomes the most venomous animal on the planet. And it stores this neurotoxin. And basically what happens is it finds its prey together with the bacteria. It then grabs the crab. It bites onto the crab. It will then bite into it using its beak. And then it will inject its neurotoxin into the crab, which basically paralyzes it. So it's got its own chemist basically living in its head pretty much. So an example of a pretty spectacular type of partnership. And some partnerships on the outside may seem really odd, but often they're some of the most powerful partnerships. And I suppose that goes to looking at diversity and embracing differences and embracing strengths that you have amongst your groups. This is an example. You've got dolphins corralling fish. So they work together. And then you've got birds who actually get in on the action. So a bird and a dolphin working together to kind of corral fish just seems completely odd. But this is the Australasian gannet. So it dive bombs into the water, kind of basically sends the fish kind of scattering. The dolphins will then clean up the spoils, and it's just incredible. These two different animals, one living in the air, one living in the marine environment, actually kind of working together. That's amazing. And these birds have like these kind of airbags built into their head, and their wings turn into fins when they dive into the water. And they can dive to about 30 metres, and they can stay underwater for about 3 minutes, which is pretty spectacular for a bird. There's also the benefits of working together. There's strength in numbers. And one of the great examples of working together is seen in the giant spider crab aggregations that come together. you know, you've got each other's backs. You can look after each other. This happens down the southern end of Port Phillip. We actually had a showing recently, but usually they come in when the water cools. And the reason that we think that they come in is to basically get undressed. It's this kind of big undressing feast that happens. And the reason they need to undress is that crabs have a hard exoskeleton, so it doesn't flex and it doesn't allow it to stretch and grow. So they get undressed. But when they get undressed, they're vulnerable to predators such as the big massive rays and octopus and things like that. So by coming in together en masse, it basically increases their chance of survival, which is pretty cool. This is what it looks like. To give you some perspective of size and how weird I am, people do snow angels, I do crab angels. And what I love about this is that you can see how shallow it is. So if you're a bit nervous, just put on a mask and snorkel and you can float there. If you've got a sup, you can stand on a sup and have a look at it. There's a way for everyone to experience what I think is one of the world's most incredible migrations. And it happens on Melbourne's front doorstep, which is, for me, pretty spectacular. I think the other thing with diversity, it encourages creativity. It forces you sometimes to be creative and to use your strengths to your advantage. An example of that, and building on crabs, are decorated crabs. Now, decorated crabs are food for lots of different animals, but what they have up their sleeve or up their claw, that's pretty bad, isn't it? I just made that up, is the fact that they've got these little hooks on their back. So what they do is they actually grab bits of seaweed or sponge and they put it on their back as a cloak of camouflage. And there's different ways that they do that. They use sponges or they use seaweed. So again, it's kind of, you know, using your strength and, you know, creativity. This is what they look like. This is like a hothouse mess, really. It's got a bit of sponge, it's got a bit of obsidian, but you can see that it actually camouflages itself and disappears into the background, which is incredible. So predators won't actually see it. Most people won't even see this once it's kind of crawling around. The only reason I saw it is because I saw it moving. And I question everything that I see in the marine environment, because you might think it's a bit of a seaweed and it could turn out to be an angler or something like that. I think the other thing with creativity is it allows you to also explore what people may seem as a weakness. Take, for example, a cuttlefish. Now, when it comes to love, cuttlefish, it's like a really bad rom-com. You get all the big males, so they're all the big males, and they usually beat each other up and compete for the cute little cuddles. Then you've got the smaller males who can't match the might of the bigger males. But what they can do is, and all cuddles can do this, and octopus and squid, they can change colour and texture. So the small males, this is a small male, he'll then become feminine and basically cross-dress. He'll pretend, see, there he is in the middle, that's a male. So the big males are fighting each other, that small male swims past, and then he gets to make out with the cuttlefish of his dreams and gets to come out with his face and tentacles intact. How cool is that? The other thing about the marine environment, and I suppose, you know, it can be applied to the work that you do, is that it forces, with creativity comes innovation. It kind of forces you to innovate, to think of different ways that you can help the community, to raise money, to make a difference. And I think the pin-up of innovation, creativity, evolution, if you like, is the seahorse. Now, for those of you who don't realise, when it comes to gender roles, in seahorses, they're completely thrown out of the window. What happens is you've got the male. Now, ladies, he's got a big pot belly that we should worship. It's very sexy, and it's not for resting the remote control or a beer. He actually puts it to good use. The female gives the eggs to the male, puts it in his big, beautiful belly. She goes off, burning the bra and celebrating, and then he's left to give birth to baby sea ponies. And that's what it looks like. It's like he's sneezing and they're kind of, you know, tumbling out like beautiful musical notes. This little seahorse here was probably about that big, so really, really tiny. It's the only male in the animal kingdom to give birth. But that's, you know, nature. And nature forces you to be innovative, to be creative. And, you know, in the oceans, I think it just epitomises it. This is a little sea pony. So there's no parental care when the little sea ponies are born. They kind of swim off into the sunset all by themselves. In the marine environment, you also have examples of adaptations. And I showed you the cuttle that changes colour and texture. So does the octopus. The octopus can change colour and texture. It's the ultimate contortionist. So it can bend, it can adapt, and it can be really resilient, which is something that, we can learn from on land. Also, I think the other thing that marine environment teaches you is that, to be prepared, because you never know what's going to be around the corner or what may not be around the corner. An example of that are these beautiful creatures called nudibranchs. Now, nudibranchs don't live for very long, probably about 30 days on average. So when it comes to reproduction, and that's what everyone's here for, or I'm not saying everyone's here to reproduce, that's a bit weird, isn't it? In terms of nature, that's the job of nature, is to reproduce, to pass on the genes to new generations. So with nudibranchs, because they're only here for 30 days, they've got to be quite clever about how they reproduce. Are they going to find another female to mate with? Well, in case they don't, they're prepared. And the way that they're prepared is that they have both male and female sex organs in their neck. Now, it's not in case they find themselves alone on a Saturday night. They probably wouldn't forgive themselves. What it does ensure is that any nudibranch of the same species that they come across, they can actually mate with and reproduce. So they're prepared, which I think is absolutely fabulous. I'm not saying that you should carry around female-male sex organs in your neck, but I think you kind of get the drift. So pretty ingenious, don't you think? So you don't miss out, just, have both bits in your neck. The other thing that I love about the marine environment is that it kind of gives you hope, and it kind of makes you feel as though when things are hopeless or things are really difficult, you just look to the marine environment to give you inspiration. And one of those forms of inspiration, and I think a fabulous example of inspiration, is the nudie. This is what happens when two nudies meet. They kind of meet and they swap sperm and then they kind of go off in their separate directions. But this is kind of the pinnacle for me of hope and creativity and working against the odds, is the humble barnacle. So, tiny little crustaceans that you find on whales and on the bottom of your boats, and sometimes they hitchhike on turtles. Well, barnacles are pretty amazing because basically they're stuck to a rock by their face. So when it comes to possibilities of love and finding a mate, doesn't really leave them many options on a Saturday night. But their form of hope. Have I got any single males in the front row? Is there any single males in the front row?
No one's going to say.
Oh, come on. No, you will love this. I guarantee. Anyway, can I use you, Mark, as an example? So, for example, if Mark was scaled up to a barnacle, or a barnacle was scaled up to, say, Mark's size, Mark, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
Are you married?
Yes.
I'm sorry wherever your wife is. But you're probably going to love this, actually. The ladies are going to be very happy. Anyway, so if a barnacle was scaled up to, say, the size of Mark's penis, because he's stuck to a rock by his face, his penis will be up to 50 metres long. I know, that deserves a clap. Good on you, Mark. Good on you. I think that's why he's sitting by himself. There's not enough room. There's not enough room. Oh, God, I get really distracted about that. So, it can't go roaming around the rock pool, but its penis can. So how's that for innovation, inspiration, and hope? All wrapped up into one. So, what I've hoped I've shown you is just how diversity can be achieved, just how important diversity can be in, resilience and adapting and creativity and support and things like that. I also wanted to just quickly let you know that all the things that I've been talking about, we put in a book and a documentary which I'll be selling somewhere at the end. And this is just a small sample of what is in the documentary. And the reason that I want to show this to you is just, again, to show you just how magical the marine environment is on our front doorstep. So you'll see some of the stuff that we've already had a chat about, and this is flashing red. Time limit exceeded. Will this explode? Mark, you stay there. Actually, I've just realised what I said. I might get kicked off. And for some reason the music's not working. And I would sing, but I think I've already tortured you all enough. So this just shows you what we've got on our front doorstep. I hope it inspires you, Mark. I hope it encourages you to put on a mask and snorkel, because for me, if you want to get people to care, they need to know something exists. And for me, I think a lot of people don't realise how magical our marine environment is on our front doorstep, how incredibly diverse it is. And they say variety is the spice of life. So let's spice it up and dive in and explore our beautiful marine environment. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Enjoy the rest of your time. Mark, your number is... No. That was a joke. Thank you. Mark's wife is just, I was just going to say, Mark's wife, everyone's going, she's so lucky. So lucky.
No. No. Oof, he's there, he's actually scratching his neck down there.
Yeah.
But Cherie, thank you. You certainly lived up to the introduction. That was very entertaining, fun and sexy. In fact, I like the idea of increasing our chance of survival by getting undressed. So could you all please stand?
Just don't trip over Mark.
And not even his feet, no. Oh, do you mind? This is really degenerated, hasn't it?
Sorry.
And it could go a lot further. But look, fantastic presentation, and it's fair to say the photos that we saw of our local environment are just staggering, but it's a real worry that we're treating it so badly and with a huge amount of apathy towards the way we treat our environment. So your presentation style certainly was a great way to get the message across, and we very much appreciate your presentation today. Cherie, as she said, will be selling her books in the foyer somewhere as we go to afternoon tea at a massive discount. Yes, absolutely, the special Rotary rate. So please grab a copy of one of those books, or are you selling more than one, or is it just the one title?
I'm selling the book and the DVD, but then I'm selling it as a special package as well.
Oh, special deal.
Oh, and I'll sign it.
Yes, yes, and you get a set of steak knives as well at the end of it.
But not Mark.